behalf of the Wright Dunbar Board, we would like to thank you for joining us today and help us to celebrate the contributions of the 2017 Walk of Fame inductees and those who have preceded them. Our region is a much better place because of the accomplishments of these talented individuals and groups that have been inducted today and, of course, in the past. Lots of things are going on right Dunbar. Come on over and visit our many stores and businesses that we have there. But one thing that we're really kind of proud of is that Wright Dunbar moved down the street to make room for our newest business over there, which is Wright Brothers USA. And Wright Brothers USA is a true legacy company of the Wright Brothers, and we're very proud to have them in the neighborhood. So thank you, Wright Brothers USA, for joining us. During this past year, we had a number of really interesting things happen. One of them was our Wright Brothers, Wright Dunbar partnered with Zink's Family Pharmacy to celebrate with the community a joint event. The Walk of Fame has another partner event called Walk the Walk, and Zink's has had usually a customer appreciation celebration. So we combined these two this past year, and we had an outstanding event. We saw this place take shape and develop into a true purpose that helps both the Walk of Fame and, of course, our neighborhood. And it also gave us an opportunity to celebrate the inductees in the Walk of Fame real time on the ground with both the inductees and their memorial stones. So it was a great event. We have a new one coming up again next year. I think you'll see that there's a tent on your table that talks all about this event. So make sure that you put that on your calendar and you join us next year for food, fun, and entertainment, and help us celebrate the many truly deserving honorees that are on the Walk of Fame. This year, we concluded a really milestone project, and that was the completion of the Walk of Fame mural, and the mural is at the corner of 3rd and William Street. One of the nice things about the Walk of Fame, of course, is that we have all those memorial stones in the sidewalk, but there was no vertical representation of the accomplishments of those inductees. So a local artist, a very outstanding artist, James Pate, designed the mural for our wall along the Wright Dunbar Conference Center. And they just did a beautiful job. That mural will be dedicated after this ceremony, and you're all welcome to come over and join the many public officials and dignitaries and citizens who will be there to dedicate the mural. The young artists worked James and the young artists worked in collaboration with Montgomery County Halo Project, the K-12 Gallery in Tejas, and we would like to thank them for their hard work and talent. It was a very significant project, and they did a beautiful job, and I think you'll see that this afternoon. We're going to host, as we said, the event this afternoon, and the neat thing about the project, it became a community project, and we had a painting day where a host of people from the community, organizations, government officials, civic groups, businesses, neighbors all came together, and they contributed to the painting of the project. So come on over and join us and get to see it. So one of my jobs here is also to thank a lot of people, so we'll work down the list. First of all, I'd like to thank and recognize the past inductees of the Hall of Fame. So with the past inductees, please stand and be recognized. We'd also like to extend a special recognition and thanks to our guests from the Shawnee Nation. They traveled a long distance to be here to help to honor and induct one of our new inductees, Tecumseh. So, Shawnee Nation, we can't thank you enough for coming today and being part of the celebration. The hardest working board in town is the Ray Dunbar Board of Trustees and the advisors that we have, and I can't think of anyone who works harder and puts in more time, their own personal time, to help to improve the Wright Dunbar neighborhood and make it the success it is. So will the Wright Dunbar Board of Directors please stand? Of course, any public 501c3, it's important that we have a great relationship with our public officials, and that we think that we have one that's unmatched. So we'd like to take this opportunity to recognize and thank our public officials. The Governor's Office, Montgomery County, and the City of Dayton have all prepared proclamations for the honorees, and they will be presented along with their other awards. We'd like to especially thank the City of Dayton and Citywide for your partnership and support. They both have played a very significant part of our success, and we can't tell you how much that success has meant to the success that we have in the district. So thank you all very much for that. Will all the public officials please stand and be recognized? Wright Dunbar is fortunate to have so many splendid volunteers. We thrive and survive on volunteers, and you will hear more about them later in the program today. We want to recognize, however, one outstanding individual, and that's the chair of this Walk of Fame Advisors, and that's Ken Kuntz. We're going to honor him with a new title. He's been involved with the Walk of Fame since the very beginning in 1995-96, and of course he's been in so many roles within the organization as well that we can't name them all. But Wright Dunbar Incorporated Board of Directors last week voted to name Kenneth Kuntz Advisor Emeritus to honor his service and so that we continue to call on his expertise. He joins Doris Ponitz in this distinguished role. They're the only two emeritus members that we have. Let's give Ken Kuntz a round of applause and recognize his contribution. Ken, thank you for everything you've done, you do, and I'm sure you will continue to do. And of course, we have to thank our sponsors. We're not going to go down the list. I hope you've been able to see the sponsors as they scroll on the screens. They're also in the program, and of course you can see them in our Walk of Fame website. So we thank you all very much. It's through your generosity and support that this event is as nice as it is, and we truly appreciate it. The Walk of Fame plays an important role for West 3rd Street. We have a great duo heading the committee this year for the Walk of Fame selection, and we would like to thank Madeline Isey and Ron Rollins for the leadership of this important task. So thank you very, very much. You do an outstanding job. We get lots and lots and lots of nominations, and they're all extremely good nominations, and you two lead the effort to sort those all through. So I would like to welcome Madeline to the stage, who will take over the program. So thank you, Madeline.
First, I would ask you to give Harry Seifert a special ovation. Yay, Harry! Harry has dedicated decades of his life to the Right Dunbar District, and I know this from personal experience. So thank you very much, Harry, to you and to your wife for dedicating so much of your time in your household to this wonderful cause. Secondly, Harry mentioned that we, as judges, receive many, many extraordinary nominations. And I brought this as a visual cue to show you. This is the binder that we went through this year. See all my little yellow sticky notes on there? So let me ask the judges to stand, please. Would the Walk of Fame judges stand? These are the folks who read this binder. Thank you. Thank you very much. I will say on behalf of the judges, this is truly a labor of love, is it not? Because we are so privileged as judges to learn so much about our town. And I say this especially as a native Daytonian, that it just really deepens the appreciation that we have for the richness of this community. So thank you to the judges, but also thank you, Right Dunbar, Inc., for allowing us to be involved in this incredible process. Finally, I'm going to put on a different hat. I'm putting on my volunteer hat for Citizens for Sinclair. Sinclair Community College is well represented in the Walk of Fame, starting with David A. Sinclair in that first big group of inductees in 1996. Of course, both Presidents Emeritus Dave Ponitz, Ned Sifferlin, and then you just heard Harry mention Doris Ponitz. Doris was not only inducted, but she was the first honorary advisor named for the Walk of Fame. Sinclair, as you know, has been central to this community for 130 years, and Sinclair is on the ballot of the Montgomery County general election on November 7th. So please keep Sinclair strong and vote yes. It's a straight renewal, won't raise your taxes, but will keep Sinclair in its vital role at the center of this community. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm James Brown from WHIO-TV Channel 7. I'm going to ask Kelly Lehman to come forward, if she can please take care of the invocation for us real quick. Kelly?
Let us pray. Great Creator, Mother Earth, thank you for this bountiful food, for the preparers, for the servers, for all the blessings we have in this amazing city, for the people that go forth and with humility talk nicely on television about their home city. We appreciate that so much. Please bless everyone who's traveled, safe travels home, and what a great day it is to be a Daytonian. Amen.
Thank you, Kelly. Folks, I've been doing this for several years, and I told the story, I think, a couple years ago. And if you can't laugh at yourself and look in the mirror, who can you laugh at? Well, there was a ceremony here a few years ago, and thank goodness there was a podium, because one James Brown forgot to zip his zipper before he walked in. So I always make sure, thanks to the Walk of Fame luncheon, it reminds me every time I speak in front of a bunch of folks. This morning, I'm driving in, and I'm walking in, and I say to myself, you know, I've never done this before. Almost ran into Congressman Hobson, literally, with my vehicle. Come up the stairs, then almost run into Miss Janney as she is walking out of the bathroom. I apologize. She didn't even notice me, thank goodness. I just kept walking with my head down. So I want to let you know, the Walk of Fame was created in 1996 as part of the city of Dayton's bicentennial celebration, and has recognized over 160 outstanding individuals and groups for their enduring personal and professional contributions, not only to our community, but to our country and the world. So today we are here to honor some wonderful people that have ties to our community. Special thanks to our lead sponsors, CareSource and Sinclair College, and of course we will recognize 6 additional inductees. When I was walking up the stairs here about a half hour ago, these 2 ladies were walking out from another room, and they recognized me, and they were so grateful that I was doing it again this year, and we were talking, and they watch Channel 7 all the time, and I always tell them, you are our customer, so thank you. Then this young lady looks at me and says, I've got a question for you. And usually after the accolades and the, hey, we really appreciate you, comes that next line. It's that but line. And she looks at me and she goes, do you know what the difference is? You know what a cross between an elephant and a rhino is? I'm saying to myself, finally I looked at her and I said, Elephino? Oh, yeah. I told Cheryl McKenna you wouldn't like that joke. But I always try to pass along a joke from my kids every year. And my son told me this morning, he said, Dad, where do fish keep their money? Anybody have an idea? In riverbanks. As my kids get older, I get more and more concerned as to whether I can share some of their jokes with you, so that's the best I can do. Please take a look at the monitors closest to you.
You know, oftentimes when I meet people who are visiting Dayton or new to Dayton and they come to the museum, they say, what is Boonshoft? They don't even say who is, they say, what is Boonshoft? And so I'll explain to them that Oscar was an engineer who came here in 1939 to work at Wright Pat, and after retiring in 1970, he spent his time on a commodities exchange, and he was very successful. And so when the time came late in life for him to give back to the community, he ultimately made major gifts. And so as you drive around Dayton, not only will you see the Boonshoft Museum of Discovery, but you'll see the Boonshoft School of Medicine at Wright State, you'll see the Boonshoft Jewish Community Center and the Boonshoft building at Kettering Hospital. And you know, that's really just a small part of Oscar's legacy that you see. Oscar was not particularly interested in recognition. There are many things that Oscar did for the community that people never knew about. One example goes back to the centennial of flight in 2003. Only a few people in the community are aware of the fact that Oscar paid for the tickets for the entire infield, and those tickets were given to Dayton school children so they could be there to hear John Glenn and Neil Armstrong, which was a really fantastic occasion. He was an extremely thoughtful and deliberate person, and he had a distinct philosophy about philanthropy. If he had his choice, he would give organizations money for endowment because he felt that that was what was going to really keep organizations strong for the future. His primary interests were healthcare organizations, Jewish organizations, and also, of course, my organization, the Dayton Society of Natural History, benefited from the fact that he gave endowment gifts. As part of his giving philosophy, he gave the money up front, no multi-year pledges, so that he really was able to have a direct and quick impact on the organizations that he did support. He was at his happiest when he was surrounded by children, and my favorite photo of him is when one of the Boonshoft Museum of Discovery's first Lego League robotics teams of middle schoolers won a prize in a local competition, and he had his photo taken with them, and they're surrounding him, and he's holding the trophy. And the smile on his face says everything about who Oscar was. Oscar and his wife Marjorie obviously made a good team. They had a long and happy marriage and 4 children, and while she was still able to, she participated in community events. It was my privilege to work with Oscar over those years. You know, I miss him, I think about him a lot, and I just feel really fortunate that I was here for the time that I had with him.
Accepting the award for the Boonshofts, their son David.
Well, first of all, I'd like to offer my sincere and great thank you to this organization for honoring my parents for their contribution to the Dayton area. The truth is they loved Dayton. They loved it very much. And they felt that the very best thing that they could do with their lives was to improve the lives of others. And they had very, as Mark was saying in the video, very specific ideas about what that meant. My father was an engineer. He looked for solutions in science. He looked for solutions in things that he could measure. And that was the nature of his deliberation, was if certain money could cause one thing to happen, Could more money help something else to happen if the actions were thoughtful and just and right and had a certain moral character to them? So he focused a lot on the quality of education in children, believing that children weren't getting enough science, weren't getting enough math. Now, he didn't necessarily look at these things as something that by themselves would do the world a lot of good, but he wanted to see skills put to work. He wanted to go to the underlying education that the children would have so that they could become creative individuals and smart individuals and functional adults. He also focused on health services and on the delivery of health services. I think if my father and mother were here today, they would be very honored to accept this award, and I think they'd be somewhat uncomfortable, which is kind of how I feel right now. But they'd be uncomfortable with the attention. My father probably would have asked us, well, what are you doing to make life better for people here in Dayton? And he'd have specific questions. He wasn't a generalist. He'd say, does everyone have access to good health care? He would say, are we teaching children science and math? I've lived a life in music, so you can imagine that was kind of tough at the beginning. He'd want to know how we were influencing our children's future as global citizens. I remember years ago him talking to me about how our kids weren't getting an education that made them competitive and able to contribute enough on a global scale. So he saw us all as a functioning organism in a much larger organism in the world. And they wanted to do their part here in this city where they lived. This was their place of choice. And they wanted to see the results. And that's how he gave the money. He wanted to see things happen then. I don't think that they ever had a moment where they thought they should accumulate wealth for themselves. You know, they believed they had enough. As middle-class Americans, you know, with his job as an engineer at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, he had a pension. And he really started to take chances in the commodities market after he retired. He did 30 years. And then he felt it was safe to kind of risk the future and be an investor. More importantly, maybe than anything, they believed in the Jewish concept of tzedakah, which means just work. It's the work that a just person does. It's work that somebody does to empower others. It's the work of justice. So it's a little different than charity. Charity is certainly involved. You have to give. But doing just work means you really think about it, and you care about it, and you contribute a little bit of your heart, a little bit of your mind, and you search yourself for your aptitudes that are unique to you, and that your uniqueness can then empower others and make the world a better place. I'm very proud of my parents' contribution to Dayton, and I hope this story inspires others, and thank you very much.
Brigadier General Benjamin O. Davis, Sr. was the first African American promoted to the rank of general in the U.S. Armed Forces in 1940 and is our second inductee today.
Now, Benjamin Davis Sr. was the kind of a man that always went above and beyond to achieve his goals. In fact, while he was in high school, we also took classes at Howard University. He even enlisted in the United States Army during the Spanish and American War. He then was able to get back into the Army and enlist and join as a lieutenant. He then worked his way up to become the very first African American one-star general in the United States Army. Benjamin Davis Sr. was a real Renaissance man. Someone who taught at Wilberforce University, Tuskegee University. He was a military attaché in Liberia. He was born in Washington, D.C. But he spent a lot of his time during his military science and tactics profession when he was teaching at Wilberforce in this community. During the off time, he would accompany widows of men who passed away during World War I in Europe. And he would go with them to the graves and as kind of someone to be a comforter and thank them on behalf of the United States Army for their husband's sacrifice. He also, even later on in his career in World War II, he would accompany various African American units and troops to hear what some of their issues were, hear what some things that happened overseas or right here in the United States. To kind of a way of bridging the gap between the troops and the leadership in the United States Army that might not have seen eye to eye at the same time. Now the thing about Benjamin Davis Sr. is that he was a link from the past to what we have here today. And he was tutored by Colonel Charles Young, who was the very first African American colonel in the United States Army. He became the very first African American one-star general. And his son, Benjamin Davis Jr., became a Tuskegee Airman and a four-star general in the United States Air Force. In fact, his son, Benjamin Davis Jr., went to West Point. Now, I am the chief of interpretation at Charles Young. Charles Young was the third African-American man to graduate from West Point, and Benjamin Davis Jr. was the fourth. See, Benjamin Davis Sr. wanted to go to West Point, but he was unable to. Even though he had passed the test and he met the qualifications, he still was not able to go to West Point Military Academy. So he pushed his son. He made sure his son got in. He made sure that his son would go on to become a great leader, in which he did by leading the Tuskegee Airmen in World War II. Benjamin Davis Sr. was a true leader, American patriot, and someone of great honor and respect.
The general passed away in 1970, and accepting on his behalf is the chief interpreter of the Charles Young Buffalo Soldier Monument, Mr. Robert Stewart.
You know, it's funny for me to stand here today because I actually grew up with a picture of Benjamin Davis Jr. and Sr. on my wall when I was a kid. That was such a powerful picture that when Benjamin Davis Jr. was graduating from Tuskegee, his father came there to shake his hand and say, "Well done, son." You see, what we do, no matter where we are in life, leads to something greater in the future. Like I said in the video, he was not able to go to West Point, but his son was. And because his son was able to go, he was able to become a Tuskegee Airman and serve during World War II, which led to something being signed called Executive Order 9981. That was signed by President Harry S. Truman that led to the integration of the military. See, Benjamin Davis Sr., while he was going through some of the trials and tribulations that he was facing while in the Army, he might not have noticed it back then, but he was actually preparing to make a major change in the country by making a change in his son. What we do every day, what we do when we go home, what we do when we go to work leads to something bigger in the future. Now, when I look at Benjamin Davis Sr.'s legacy, I think, what's going to be my legacy? What am I going to do that people 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 100 years from now can look back and say, wait a minute, it started with this guy, or it came to being because of something that he did, someone that he reached. So I challenge all of you here today. Are you ready for the challenge?
She's second.
To use the legacy of someone that you respect. Of course, I respect Benjamin Davis Sr., Colonel Charles Young, Benjamin Davis Jr., men like that, but use someone that you may respect and have a lot of respect for and reverence for to inspire you to make a change. Thank you.
A young lady by the name of Cathy Guisewite entertained us for more than 3 decades with her cartoon character, Cathy, a single career woman faced with the issues and challenges of work, relationships, her mother, food, or as Guisewite herself would put it in one of her strips, the 4 basic guilt groups.
Cathy Guisewite is a cartoonist that was born in Dayton, Ohio, that was the creator of the long-running comic strip Cathy, about this young woman, this young single woman that battled with her weight, with man issues, with relationship goals, and with life goals, really. Her comic was a sort of a precursor to many women being involved in comics. So I think the comic of Cathy was kind of like maybe a Mary Tyler Moore of my generation, but that living single, negotiating life, laughing at yourself, man trouble, clothing trouble, or, just kind of figuring it out, being really proud about being on your own. So one of the great things about Cathy is it ran over 30 years. So it spanned the 70s, the 80s, and into the 90s, which obviously there were a lot of changes. And her catchphrases like "ack," and her trials and tribulations with her boyfriend Irvin and her dog Electra are pretty much blazed in everybody my age's brains. So one of the reasons why Cathy was such a strong and a trailblazing comic is before her, there were comics like Brenda Starr and Little Orphan Annie, and they were sort of like soap opera, serial style. And Cathy was the first semi-autobiographical comic that really lent a voice directly to female audiences, or was directed to female audiences. So it really blazed a trail for feminism in the comic world. I grew up reading comics with my dad, and I grew up in the generation where Cathy was really popular. Cathy Guisewite won an Emmy, and I remember growing up where there was Cathy everything. Cathy coffee mugs, pillows, just about everything. You'd look in the comic strip, and there was BC and Andy Capp and all these things that just I couldn't relate to or didn't have anything to do with or any insight to. And there was Cathy. I saw myself very much as a Cathy because I did have a little dog like Electra, and I was single in my 20s and 30s. And my dad actually used to cut pictures of the comic and send it to me when I moved to Texas. Little did I know later on I would move to Dayton, Ohio, where she was born. So I am proud to live in Dayton, where Cathy's from, because she certainly was an icon in the comic world.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome cartoonist and Emmy Award winner Cathy Guisewite.
Thank you. They say that the first 5 years of a person's life are the most important. They set everything, your personality, your values, your confidence, how you relate, even how a person thinks. So the first 5 years of my life were spent in Dayton, Ohio. My family moved to Michigan when I was in kindergarten, but Dayton had already worked its magic on me. Dayton planted deep values, a profound commitment to family that, if you know my work, you know it showed up in almost everything I did. An early comic strip, Cathy the character is saying to her mom, "I love you, Mom, but I will never be like you. I will never look like you, think like you, or act like you." And Mom says, "Oh, I know, I used to say the exact same thing to my mother. And I wound up looking, thinking, and acting just like her. See, you're just like me already. We're exactly alike." Cathy runs from the room screaming, and Mom says, "Oh, isn't that cute? That's just what I used to do." Dayton planted in me a bold confidence from a young age to stand up for injustice, But it also planted the lovely social graces so that I would stand up for injustices, but do it politely. So another day, Cathy is storming out of the hair salon. Her hair looks terrible, and she's yelling to her friend, "Sue the hairstylist. I'm picketing the shop. I'm writing the Better Business Bureau. I'll have her license revoked. She will rue the day she trashed my life for $100 plus tip." And her friend says, "You gave her a tip?" Cathy says, "I didn't want her to think I was dissatisfied." Dayton taught me the value of $1. Cathy again is rushing out of a bathing suit, swimwear dressing room, screaming to a friend, screaming to the sales lady, $95 for this swimsuit. Every year, the suits get smaller and the prices get larger, and the women of this country are sick of it. We are not going to take it anymore. Understand, we are not going to take it. And she throws the swimsuit down and they march off. And her friend says, "Didn't fit?" Cathy says, "Are you kidding? If it had fit, I would have given her $500 for it." Dayton infused me with the innovative spirit that it's famous for, with the ability to see things just a little bit differently that gives one hope. Cathy was making cookies, and a friend walked in and said, "Here, let me help you bake the cookies. Where's the rest of the dough?" Cathy says, "I ate it." And the friend says, "You ate it? You only got 9 cookies out of a recipe that was supposed to make 24? Cathy, I can't believe this." Cathy says proudly, "Neither can I. I usually only get 6. My parents moved back to Dayton when I was in college, and when they did it, it was like they moved home. This was our roots. This was home base. Dayton is where my dad got his first job after World War II and where our family was born. The Dayton Daily News was one of the very first newspapers that bought my comic strip. It ran it on the first day it ran in 1976, and it ran it every single day for 34 years until I quit doing the strip. You have, yeah, for the Dayton News. You have no idea what it meant to me and to my family to have a little chunk of our lives delivered to the front porches of so many Dayton homes for so many years. To know now that a little piece of our family will be enshrined in cement in the Dayton Walk of Fame is an unbelievable honor, not just for me, but for my whole family and my mom, who's 95, who's living in Sarasota. I never would have been able to do the kind of work that I did if I didn't have such a solid foundation. I know that my blessed life is a result of the wonderful beginning that I had here. Those first glorious 5 years that cemented who I am and what all of Ohio did to my family to create the kind of upbringing that I had. The grounding that I had in faith, family, hope, optimism, a deep connection to my community, surrounded by inspiring, uplifting role models like the other honorees today. I am honored to the bottom of my heart to share this stage with them and this event with them today, and am proud and grateful beyond words to be from Dayton. Thank you.
Mr. Hobson, first elected to office in 1982, served Ohio first and then in the Senate and then the U.S. Congress until 2009.
The one thing that stands out about Congressman Hobson is that he thoroughly enjoyed people, and he wanted to serve his constituents in ways that many office holders never think of. He is probably the one person most responsible for developing the bikeways, not only in his home county of Greene, but throughout southwestern Ohio. We have the largest network of bikeways probably in the entire United States. and that is a Dave Hobson creation. He is one of the few fathers of Dayton's National Park, honoring the Wright brothers and Paul Laurence Dunbar. And Congressman Hobson, while still a state senator and then a congressman, together with Congressman Tony Hall, basically sold his colleagues on the idea of a national park honoring America's inventors who literally changed the course of history, and Paul Laurence Dunbar. Once the national park was established, Congressman Hobson took the lead in getting funding to make certain that the national park was ready for the 2003 celebration of the 100th anniversary of powered flight. By the late 20th century, while the medical center was still there and still vibrant, many Daytonians didn't even know it existed. A lot of the historic buildings were falling into disrepair. Thanks to Congressman Hobson's efforts, he secured funding to refurbish and rededicate the historic chapel on campus. From that point, the campus itself has become a designated National Historic Area. None of these things and so many more could not have occurred without the efforts of Congressman Hobson. He truly enjoyed people, and his relationships were formed by integrity, honesty, and just by being a good human being. He worked tirelessly with members not only of his own political party, but those of other persuasions and independents as well. And because of that, his legacy lives throughout this multi-county area.
Ladies and gentlemen, David L. Hobson.
Well, first of all, I'm overwhelmed by this event today, and I really am honored that the federal judge, Judge Rice, did that presentation. I'm glad he presided over that and not some other event he might have been able to do. But I want to say, in Dayton, in this region, we are fortunate that we have a federal judge who has never shirked getting involved in the community when he saw something that needed to be done. And I think Judge Rice deserves a round of applause. Not for me, but for him. And I want to thank all the people from Clark County and other counties that came today down to Montgomery County. Sometimes there's some jealousies here and there. But I want to tell you something about Cathy she didn't tell you that should endear her to all of you. She flies to Sarasota, Florida every 3 weeks to see her mom. I wish all kids could do that. As you get older, you tend to lose your children a little bit, and you hope they're there all the time. And we have a daughter who lives in Naples, Florida, but we go to see her too, but we stay 6 months when we go. Not with her. Now, Ashley and I share something I was reading last night. We both like Ashley's Bakery in Oakwood. And if you haven't been there, you all ought to go. You can see what it did for me. It's just one of the gems of this community. It's right across the street from one of our favorite restaurants, the Oakwood Club. But I want to talk a little bit about the region, how we got here, and maybe leave you with somewhat of a message for the future. I really did enjoy working across my district, and I enjoyed working within the communities. Wright-Patterson was 70% of my district, and the other part was in Tony Hall's. And so we naturally got to know each other. And we both got on committees that we could help the region. And at that time, I became an appropriator and a budgeteer, and that's kind of hard to do. They sent me to watch John Kasich as we did the budget, that we wouldn't take all the money away. And I kind of sold out when we did the balanced budget with President Clinton. But what happened with Tony is that I got elected, and I realized the Republicans here weren't going to beat Tony, and the Democrats weren't going to beat me in Clark County. So we needed to figure out how we could do things for the region. And so we decided, and I went to him and said, I'm not going to do news releases without you. And I want you in my news releases, and I hope you'll put me in yours. And we did that. And that became a bond that exists today. We are still friends. Tony's still doing great work in this community. We have places near each other in Florida, and we get together with some other colleagues in Florida in the winter. So those things go on. I enjoyed, the one thing you didn't mention in all that is the mound. The mound was a very difficult environmental problem dealing with nuclear waste in this community. And we couldn't get it all done separately. We had to come together. And I became chairman of Energy and Water Appropriations, where all the nuclear weapons are funded and maintained. We don't deliver them in that committee, but I was on the other committee, Defense Appropriations, where we do. But we worked hard because whenever that facility was built, they didn't care about the environment. They were working for another goal, but it was built right over an aquifer. And if that stuff had gotten into that aquifer, we don't have the technology to clean it up. So we worked hard to make that done. We worked also in my district at Wilberforce and Central State. And there's some neat things we did over there on water. We worked on the historic house over there. But I really, all the years we were in, with my partner Carolyn, who we've been together for longer than we like to tell publicly, but we've worked together on a number of projects to try to help people. Our goal was not for self-aggrandizement, but to help the quality of life of people. And we spent money on programs trying to improve people's lives. And I think this region does that in itself naturally. Sometimes we forget about that, but there's a lot of good programs in this community, around the community, that need help. People step up and try to help. They just need more help. And part of this is I think the government needs to help the local communities to get things done. Hopefully, in the years to come, people will realize that that was a better way to get things done. Yelling and screaming doesn't really work. It works maybe in the short run, but in the long run, you have to have a consensus among people to try to get things done. And I want to thank all the people in this community, and the people who are here today. There's people here from Springfield. I didn't realize that there's a whole group of people from the Masonic community. I don't show up as well to theirs as they did for me, but they're here today. That was a great expression to me. But giving is what we're about. Giving, I think, is what makes America different than any place else in the world. You look at what's happening with these terrible storms that we've had and how people reach into their pockets, no matter how much money they have. The spirit is in giving and in doing. And I think our country needs to continue to do that. In spite of some of the anger you may hear and feel, this is still the greatest country in the world. We just have to figure out how to make it better and help others to be better. Thank you.
Hobson, I'm right there with you on Ashley's. I don't miss too many meals. So I get off the air last night at 6:30, and there's this big box of Ashley's. And I've never had a sand tart, but let me tell you, I had about 3 sand tarts in 5 minutes. And the whole sand tart Ashley's thing is kind of the transition into Oakwood native and graduate of the Miami Valley School, Allison Janney. Starred on Broadway, in films, as well as the presidential press secretary of The West Wing, and currently stars on Mom, which is a very highly rated television show on WHIO-TV Channel 7. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for helping pay my salary with the advertising. Take a look.
Oh, my memories of Allison go back many years. Her parents were good friends of ours, and she, of course, was a a friend of our kids. My twin sons were great friends of her older brother, Jay. I know those guys tormented Allison, but she took it with such aplomb, she never rose to the bait. She usually just let out a great deep-throated laugh, which even in those days, when they were little kids, she had this wonderful signature deep-throated laugh. She really was quite mature as a child, I thought. She had amazing manners and was just a really kind, good person. When she was really pretty young, she began a lot of extracurricular activities that really prepared her for the performing arts career that she has now. The first play we saw was in Nantucket, Massachusetts. She was in a summer theater production there, and so I was able to see some of her early work. I remember going to a bloody thing called One Neck, in which she was the victim, and she came out later to say hi, and she was covered with blood. Ketchup, I'm sure, or whatever they use for blood. A lot of her really good performances, which were on Broadway, and they got great reviews, and she really earned some accolades and awards for her work. It's really been quite thrilling. And then, of course, when she became a star on The West Wing, we were avid fans. We did not miss an episode of CJ. She was magnificent in that, but, you know, she's been on a lot of films since. And now, of course, she's Mom on Mom. She never forgot Dayton. She has come to perform to support some of the performing arts, and she has a lot of other causes that she goes to support in appearances of one kind or another. But she was a very determined, very persistent person, and I knew this woman is slated for bigger things, big things.
Ladies and gentlemen, 7-time Emmy Award winner, Allison Janney.
Thank you so much. I had no idea that Pam Houck did that for me. I want to thank her and also Mr. Coons for nominating me for this, and all of you who are responsible for thinking that I deserved it. It's an amazing honor. There are a lot of people, too many to thank here in Dayton, who helped me on the way to receiving this honor. I think most of you here know who you are, and I will only take the time to thank a few because there's not enough time, but two people I am very lucky to have here with me today are my mother and father, Macy and Jerv Janney. Yes. They have been there for me at every single turn in my life, every event, high and low, and they continue to be there for me, and I'm so grateful for your love and continued support. Besides them, there are several Miami Valley organizations and related people to whom I owe my deepest gratitude. The Miami Valley School, where I started my early education. All right, I get a shout out over there for Miami Valley. And my introduction to the arts. Some of you may have read in a lovely article in the Dayton Daily News about my very first part in the theater in Dayton, Ohio, was that of the pivotal role of Noah Claypool, the Undertaker's son, in Oliver. So we were at the forefront of gender-blind casting back then, and from there, you know, there was frankly only up to go, I think. Also, my great thanks to the Dayton Ballet Company and to my mother for making me go to ballet, not after, you know, first after getting a huge Frisch's Big Boy or a slice at Flying Pizza and then going to ballet. I can't believe that I thought that was a good idea. But for a 6-foot-tall girl, my time at the Dayton Ballet was invaluable towards getting me to stand tall and owning my height with grace and confidence. So I thank them for that. The Ice House, I don't know if anyone remembers the Ice House in Kettering, but that's where I started. That wasn't that was somebody just dropped something. I thought they had clapped. Okay. I spent a lot of time on the ice there. My first dreams as a girl was to be a figure skater. And my mother and father would get up at 5 in the morning and drive me to that rink, and I spent a lot of hours there skating, and it was great to have a dream and have a facility like that to spend my time in. And then, of course, I had that lovely accident that some of you know about, and spent a lot of time at the Kettering Hospital, and I thank Dr. Percy there for saving my life. That was an interesting time in my life, but my life was saved here in Dayton, Ohio. I was reborn in Dayton, Ohio. Can I say that? I'm going to say that. I also want to thank the Miami Valley Hospital for all the good work they do in taking such good care of my mom and dad when they've needed care, and I'm sure many more. The Dayton Hydraulic Company, which was founded in 1845 by my ancestors, and its manager, Crest Realty. I know we have a huge table here. Thank you all for working alongside my father all these years. The Muse machine, even though I was not here during its inception, I know you all are here, and all of us have not escaped the indomitable force of Susie Bassani in my life, and have been part of some of your productions, as has my mother. And my thanks are reserved only in one respect, which is that I can't help but compare myself with past and other current nominees and wonder why me. Certainly Oscar and Marjorie Boonshoft and Charles Kettering would have a good laugh over my math SAT scores. No joke there. Irma Bombeck would probably roll over in her grave at Woodland Cemetery hearing the language and the subject matter on Mom, as we all know. She was, and Orville and Wilbur, my dad helped me come up with this one, which is actually it's very true. Orville and Wilbur Wright would be embarrassed in the name of aviation if they saw the claw marks my terrified fingers left in the arms of my hapless seatmates on countless flights from New York to Los Angeles. But all of this was forgotten, however, when my mom and dad and I toured the site at 3rd and Williams yesterday. It was beautiful, albeit very hot fall day here in Dayton, Ohio. And it was such a beautiful moment for the three of us to look, and they were still painting the beautiful mural, and we looked down at all the incredible people who had stones down on the sidewalk. And I feel incredibly grateful, and I will never forget being cemented into the fabric of Dayton, Ohio, and I thank you all very, very much indeed. Cheers.
Our final honoree was a Native American Shawnee warrior who grew up around Dayton. Tecumseh was a respected war chief, a strong and eloquent orator, and a leader who worked tirelessly to promote tribal unity.
Tecumseh was leader of the Shawnee in the late 1700s and early 1800s. He was born in 1768 as the Americans started to spread into what was called the Northwest Territory, what's now Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin. Really from the time he was born, Tecumseh knew conflict and he knew loss, both of land and of friends and family. The year he was born, 1768, a treaty was signed that ceded a lot of land that was considered Shawnee land. At the age of 6, Tecumseh lost his father at the Battle of Point Pleasant. So in 1779, Tecumseh's mother, many other family members and friends and tribal members moved west of the Mississippi to really get away from the conflict. Tecumseh stayed. With the signing of the Treaty of Greenville in 1795, the Shawnee and other Ohio Native peoples ceded about the southern half of Ohio. And after that is when Tecumseh really started to take on a leadership role among the Shawnee. By the early 1800s, along with his brother, Tenskwatawa, the Shawnee prophet, they were leading a revitalization movement to encourage the Shawnee people and other tribes, all the Great Lakes tribes, really to stand up and fight for their homelands in the Ohio River Valley and the Great Lakes region. And by about 1809 or so, Tecumseh was really working on putting together a confederacy of tribes. And really part of what Tecumseh had envisioned was saving tribal land and creating essentially kind of a tribal state that would be in some ways separate, I think, from the United States. But the U.S. continued pushing into Indian territory, and ultimately Tecumseh and his movement, in the end, I think were outnumbered by the Americans. The revitalization movement that Tecumseh and his brother were working on, there's another Shawnee revitalization going on now, as tribal members are really reclaiming their language, relearning the language that was taken away from them, kind of reconnecting with their historic homelands in Ohio. We have documentation of Tecumseh all around the Dayton area, from Greenville to up by Springfield to down to Chillicothe. So this was Shawnee territory that he was fighting to defend, fighting to save for his people. And so for Dayton to recognize his efforts, I think is a very important recognition for Tecumseh, but also for today's Shawnee tribes, for the absentee Shawnee, the Eastern Shawnee, and the Shawnee tribes who were forcefully removed from this area in the mid-1800s.
On behalf of Tecumseh and the Shawnee, please welcome Governor Edwina Butler Wolf of the absentee Shawnee tribe.
Good afternoon. It's an honor. Today, I am honored to be here recognizing Tecumseh's significant role in our tribal history as a leader for the Wright Dunbar Special Event Walk of Fame. Tecumseh's power of influence and strength is a core value that will never be forgotten in Shawnee history. Like many cultures and ancient civilizations from our past, we all believe in maintaining our way of life and our traditions, and that's what Tecumseh was fighting to keep. Today, we've seemed to have forgotten with destructive habits and disrupting the connection from our ancestors. It's our job to preserve those connections and protect them for futures to come. It's vital we teach our youth and ensure they're getting the education utmost priority. The foundation Tecumseh laid out is and has always been our vision of today's for a stronger Shawnee Native American. At this time, I'd like to introduce our veteran warriors from the absentee Shawnee tribe that made the trip up here to Dayton, Ohio. First of all, I'd like to recognize David Little. If you could stand as I call your name. Walter Larney. Don and Esteline Schollenberg. Twala Parker, Jason Bender, and Michelle Woolison. I'd like to thank you for all your contribute to the absentee Shawnee tribe. As I travel as a tribal leader, governor of the absentee Shawnee tribe across Indian country, I could always depend on our warriors to be there when needed. So my hats goes off to all warriors that served in the military and did their service to keep our country as free. Tecumseh, I would like to say a few things about our absentee Shawnee flag that is displayed up here off to my right. Leroy White, a tribal member, designed the flag for us, and it symbolizes Tecumseh is the individual there in the center. The two feathers is Tecumseh and his brother, the prophet. The two stars on our flag represents the Brigadier General by British forces. And then the saying on this Lesenwa, it means Shawnee among. That's what this flag represents, and we are honored to have Chief Tecumseh recognized, and I thank you all for allowing that to happen. I know when I first brought in the email that came through my office about this event. As a tribal leader, I have many issues that come across my desk, and so I wanted to thank my assistant, Twala Parker, and our media director, Sherman Tiger, for taking that role and getting this all together for the Shawnee people. As was mentioned earlier, there is several Shawnee tribes in the state of Oklahoma. There's 39 federally recognized tribes in the state of Oklahoma. And to have our neighbors, Shawnee, Glenna Wallace, there today representing the Shawnee tribe. It's an honor for her to be in the audience. I want to thank her for making that trip here as well. And the Eastern Shawnees is our neighboring tribe also, and the Shawnee tribe. But the absentee Shawnee tribe, we are located in Shawnee, Oklahoma. And I also want to thank my son, Joshua Gibson, for pushing me for yesterday when we came in from the long airplane ride to hear from Shawnee. He wanted to go out to the mounds, separate mounds, and so, which is a long distance, so we did take that trip out there, so I am glad. And as an educator, I'm going to take back that event that I'd taken yesterday to my youth there at the tribal headquarters, because I think it's very important, and I hope that in the state of Ohio that there is some history taken into our public schools about Chief Tecumseh. I'd like that more than ever to happen for people to recognize who Chief Tecumseh is. And we as well talk about him all the time in our tribe. We have many warriors in our tribe that represents our tribe. So I want to thank you for allowing me to speak and to honoring our great leader of Chief Tecumseh. Also at this time, I want to bring forward to have the veterans, Walter Larney, come forward. We would like to honor somebody out here as one of the judges that made this event happen, to recognize Chief Tecumseh. And so they want to, if the other veterans want to come forward too, you're welcome to come forward. At this time, we would like to honor Dean Alexander. Thank you.
Folks, in my business, I'm always fascinated by people's stories. And every night on television, I know we put a lot of bad stuff on TV. But I promise you, this afternoon, there'll be a good piece of news on TV, and that's what everybody's done here in this room today. As I listen to these stories and I listen to where folks have been, I always try to take a word or two away from everybody. Mr. Boonshoft, you talked about just work. Brigadier General Davis made a change. Cathy, values. Mr. Hobson, work together. Allison, she had more than one. Mom and Dad. Grace and confidence, and reborn in Dayton. Tecumseh, preserve and protect. I ask as we all go our separate ways here in the next few moments to kind of think about those few words that I just described to you. In this community, in this room, whether it's Greene County, Montgomery County, Clark County, we can all do something to make our community a better place to live. These honorees, I guarantee they didn't start out in life thinking that, by God, I wanted to someday have that little plaque. No. Most of the best ones, the ones that work the hardest, that's the last thing they want. So as we go our separate ways today, I inspire you and I challenge you to do something good today, tomorrow, next week, next year. Thank you.